Welcome to Wrestling at Random. I'm Jeremy Deemer.
And I am Adam Summers, and we've got something a little bit different for you this week, but I think you're going to enjoy it quite a bit.
Yeah, I think so. We've been asked to be a guest on another podcast, so we figured it would be a treat as we're reviewing a show for that podcast to drop it in to our free feed here, and you can hear us review. It's the most modern thing we've done. It breaks our model, but we were a guest on someone else's show, so we did their model this time, and we reviewed Progress 18.
Yes, Progress 18, Progress Wrestling, one of the biggest companies during the BritWres explosion of the prior decade. This is relatively early on in their run. There's a lot of names that you will recognize, some of them for good reasons. A lot of them, unfortunately, will be names that you'll recognize as key parties in the speaking out scandal of a couple of years ago, if you're listening to this in linear fashion. So there's definitely some names that will not necessarily bring up the best of memories, but it is still an interesting show. It's interesting, I think, to bring you a BritWres show from this time period here on the podcast feed, because it's something that we have not yet talked about on Wrestling at Random proper. And so, yeah, I think it's something that you'll enjoy, and it's a quality podcast, a very good podcast as well, that we are sort of combining with here on this episode. A 3-man booth. It's like an episode of Monday Nitro coming at you. Tell everybody about
a good one, a good episode.
Oh yes, exactly. Larry Zbyszko is nowhere to be found here in this crossover edition of Wrestling at Random, appearing on the Apron Bump podcast. At Apron Bump on Twitter is where you can check out Kyle and his show.
That's right. So they do a similar show reviewing professional wrestling. So this was a great opportunity for us to be on his show. So you'll hear the third man you'll hear is Kyle, and then Adam and myself interjecting and reviewing the show from Progress 2015. So it definitely give his show a listen after you've listened to all of our episodes and subscribe to our Patreon, of course. And so I think without further ado, why don't we get into our review?
As long as I have your velvety voice in my ears, that's all I need.
Perfect. There you go.
But yeah, you said it, and that's the exact thought that I had when I first saw this card. And it's main evented by a six-man title match for the Progress Championship. You have Jimmy Havoc, the champion, defending against Marty Scurll, Dave Mastiff, Noam Dar, Paul Robinson, and Will Ospreay. Now, four of those guys have had individual title matches in the previous chapters, where Jimmy Havoc, slides by in some way or fashion. Paul Robinson, as you guys probably figured out, is in a faction with Jimmy Havoc. So he's basically there to kind of help Havoc defend the title. But you mentioned that all their stars are in this one match. So the rest of the card is it's a little thin, but there is some good stuff amongst it. There's no real... Well, maybe you guys will disagree, but there's no real bad matches, except for one, actually, now that I just think about it. But we'll get through it. Yeah. There's a reason, though, and I'll bring it up.
I wouldn't say there's anything that's 100% terrible, other than the one thing that I'm sure you're going to bring up. But to me, it's a bit noteworthy, and it's also indicative of the style and the time period on the indies, whether it be here in the U.S. or in the U.K., how stylistically similar a lot of the wrestlers are. And it's something that Jeremy and I talk about a lot when we go to shows together, how when you've got, say, 15 guys on a show that are all doing the step up Gamangiri into the springboard, whatever, and all that sort of stuff, which is great. But when you've got 2 of them that can do it really, really, really well, and then the other 13 that try to do it but don't do it as crisply, it almost detracts from then the 2 guys that do it really well, because you've seen it over and over on the show. So there's Dave Mastiff. I was thrilled when I saw that dude on this show, and I saw him doing what he was doing in this match. I'm like, thank you, somebody different.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's definitely. That's modern wrestling in a nutshell, kind of.
Oh, yeah.
You get a lot of moonsaults and Canadian destroyers and enziguris, and kind of blend together eventually, like you said. But
it feels like everybody's kind of, at a certain point, everybody started training to be the same wrestler. And, there's a great quote or a great interview that Minoru Suzuki did last year where he talked about how Jon Moxley was terrible at everything. And that's what makes him a great wrestler. Basically, the idea that the things that you aren't great at, the things that you aren't perfect at, let's say you don't run the ropes perfectly, or you don't move exactly like everybody else, or, the kick you throw looks a little bit different. Those things that maybe in a training school, they'd say, well, that's off. You got to drill that. In the end, those are the things that actually make you look like a little bit different wrestler and make you stand out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely value to being a little rough around the edges. I think.
Yeah, we love when the roughness adds to the struggle, and then it makes it just a different. Less polished is sometimes an advantage to a match, as you can see the struggle. It adds a different dimension, a different layer to it, and to be clear, Adam and I review classic pro wrestling shows on our podcast. So we review a lot of old stuff and stuff that's at least 10 years old. So, but to be clear, we do watch a ton of modern pro wrestling. We from all over the world,
hours and hours and hours a week.
Yes,
and also to be clear, so people don't think I'm like a Jim Cornette type. I love modern wrestling.
Right. That's I want to make sure that
I watch
these kids these days.
Tens of hours a week for wrestling, of modern wrestling for the Japanese wrestling podcast that I do, the Big Audio Nightmare, on top of going to indie shows all the time. So, like, I appreciate the modern style.
We went to AEW on last Wednesday in Chicago.
Yeah.
So we
exactly.
We battled a snowstorm to get there.
Did we ever? So, yeah, the modern style isn't something that's a put-off necessarily, but it's interesting when you're watching a full show like this, that the guys that, if you were just to put them on a random show, like Dave Mastiff wouldn't necessarily stand out. But when you put him on a show with, a Will Ospreay and a Flash Morgan Webster who are great at the high-flying style, and then sort of a cascading list of guys who aren't as good, Dave Mastiff, to me, stands out as the guy that was the most noticeable guy in the entire card.
Are you trying to tell me that Bubblegum isn't good?
Oh, he is not good.
I
can confirm.
Don't understand. And again,
I don't want to blow our load on that. I want us to edge to that match. It's towards the end.
Yes. What a strange character and wrestling style match together. We will get to it.
I'll put it this way. When I saw him on the card, I was like, man, I've never heard of this guy. I figured out why.
Yeah. No, I try not to usually go on the old Wikipedia. I usually hit the cage match, but I had to go full Wikipedia to figure out what the deal was with this dude, because I was shocked that I had no idea who he was.
Yeah. Well, we figured it out. We figured out why.
Yes.
Didn't make it. Just close.
Yeah, maybe one day. Maybe. Is he still alive? You said you did a Wikipedia search.
He is, and that's the one thing I don't know how much you have or haven't touched on fully on the Progress side in terms of the whole speaking out movement. And like, to me, that was the other thing with this show. When I saw Progress and then I looked at the card, I'm like, oh wow, it's Progress from 2015. And there's a fairly high percentage of guys from here that have been fairly credibly implicated in some not too great things. And he, from what I could tell, he's one of those guys that was had gotten himself mixed up in that whole. Had done some terrible things. I don't want to equivocate and say got himself mixed up. He'd done some pretty awful things.
No,
yeah.
And that's a whole separate podcast. We could dive into all of the speaking out stuff. If you aren't aware of that, there's plenty of people more talented than us that have covered that in depth. And you should definitely read it. And you should definitely see what happened and keep a lookout on what people are doing to try to make the wrestling scene, especially the British wrestling scene, a better place.
And you've got some people who are really trying to make it a better scene, and then you've got some reputation laundering going on, and so it is interesting though, because you see some very big stars on this show, some guys that were trending to go a certain direction, and then when things came out about what they did, they've dropped off the map or main event in Puerto Rico.
Yeah. That is different avenues people take to handle that.
But so we are definitely not minimizing or ignoring it, but we are going to do our best to separate the art from the artist in this review specifically.
Yeah, we're going to review the show is the idea.
we can compartmentalize the performers separate from the people
for this review.
Yeah. If we've been able to do it with Chris Benoit, Jeremy,
I swear to you, I was literally about to say that.
Yeah, it shows up all the time on the randomizer.
Yeah, that first episode that we did about that had a Benoit match, which was the Royal Rumble 2003. We talked a lot about it on there, and like we always say on the podcast, when we go into talking about a Chris Benoit match, we're not ignoring it. Go back and listen to that episode. We've talked through it as much as we can, and just know that all the feelings we had when we talked about that a couple years ago, we still have them now, and it's the same way with this.
It's one of those things where it's like it can't be unsaid. Like everybody has the same kind of feeling. Nobody's like, yeah, Chris Benoit, good for you. Like everybody's like kind of on the same boat, so we can.
I will say though, we did have someone decide to stop listening to the podcast.
We got a 1-star review because we gave a disclaimer about it.
Yeah, leave a nasty review because we talked about Chris Benoit and what he did and how terrible it was and how conflicted it made us feel about watching his matches. Someone stopped listening to the podcast over that. So,
but we powered on. We soldiered on without him, and we've been able to produce 3 seasons of content.
Sure? You sure you guys are gonna be able to make it without that?
Yeah, we did.
Somehow the show continued without the Chris Benoit moralists on board. So we survived, thankfully, and we're here with you.
Well, hopefully you guys survive that. Hopefully you don't bring your 1-star guy to my podcast.
No.
This might be a bad idea.
We're hoping that we bring some of your passionate listeners over to give our podcast.
Absolutely.
He's a bunch of animals that listen to me. But speaking of animals, let's talk about this intro here. So we got so it's chapter 18. It's the 3rd anniversary of Progress, which is pretty significant. And one thing about this show, which you guys hadn't seen other shows, so you wouldn't know that this was different. Typically, these shows, they don't show any entrances. They don't show, like, the intro. When Jim Smallman, who's the owner, ring announcer guy, they don't show any of that in the beginning. They just cut right to the matches, and then the match will end, and then it'll be, like, a graphic on screen that'll cut right to, like, right before the match starts.
For each match, so they don't show any entrances at all, you're saying?
Pretty much no. Maybe a few here and there if like something happens during the entrance, but in general they don't show really any entrances. So I don't know if that's something they just do going forward, or if that was a special thing for the anniversary, or if they just didn't catch it this time. Who knows? Because a lot of the music's, I don't know what the copyright deal is with the music.
There's a lot of Metallica, and I said, I don't think Lars Ulrich signed off on the usage of this much Metallica.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, at the open, I was a little bit disappointed. I heard that music, and I thought, oh, man, Nick Gage in Progress, but sadly not the case.
Anytime a show opens with "For Whom the Bell Tolls," I'm in. I know we're going to be off to a good start.
Yeah, especially when a dog comes out. So we got Jim Smallman. It's just like the banter in the beginning. He's kind of warming up the crowd, I guess, a little bit, going over the rules, which there's only one rule, and that's don't be a dick, apparently. And then as Jim is talking, music interrupts him, and a dog mascot comes out. Like kind of a Clifford the Big Red Dog kind of deal, maybe a little more badass version of Clifford.
I assumed it was Cody Rhodes in the mascot, having experienced end stage Bullet Club Ring of Honor.
Oh, yes. That would have made sense. But it was not. It was the Download Dog, who apparently is a thing. So
the mascot of the Download Festival.
Yes,
there you
course.
Go.
We all know this, right?
I know the Download Festival. I was aware of that because I know they've done wrestling there before. And
the marketing of the Download Dog, apparently.
The Download Dog, I missed that. I haven't seen that on many.
Hasn't reached over the pond yet.
No.
But maybe we'll start it here. But yeah, the Download Dog is here to basically give Jim Smallman a note announcing that Progress will be a part of the Download Festival. Coming up here, I don't know what exactly, maybe a few months after the show, for several days. So that's a big deal, big festival. Progress still fairly new. I mean, they're 3 years in, but they're only 18 shows in, really. So they're still fairly new. So it's a big deal for Progress at this point. So the dog's out there. Everybody's having fun. Oh, man, Progress, going to Download. And then out comes Jimmy Havoc, the Progress champion. I should say, on that note that the dog gave to Smallman, one of the amendments was Jimmy Havoc is banned from the festival.
Seems like a good idea all around, really.
Yeah.
Wrestling, not wrestling. I'd say if you're holding the Download Festival, Jimmy Havoc can be outside the fence.
I don't know if we want to talk about Jimmy Havoc now or later, but
let's get it out of the way now. I'm just going to jump in and say, how is this man the world champion of this company with all these other great wrestlers? And they said at one point that he'd been the world champion for 14 months.
Yep. Do you want me to tell you how he won the title? Maybe that'll shed some light.
First, I was just gonna say I've seen Jimmy Havoc in a lot of places. He AEW and other promotions, and I've never
under various rocks and dark alleys.
Yeah, I never got it. I never got like the popularity. Like he seems to have a cult following, but like and people dug it, but I don't. The character and the wrestler never really did anything for me.
He always came off to me like a Kirkland's British Raven.
Okay, yeah, I could. Yeah,
that's pretty funny.
Yeah, he's just and I don't know if it's I don't know what it is, but it never clicked with me. I never got it. I never got the push. But like here, he seemed to be pretty. Got a lot of reactions from the crowd for sure.
Yeah. I think Jimmy Havoc, he plays the slime ball heel really well, especially when you factor in he has a faction surrounding him that helps him win a lot of matches, all the hullabaloo surrounding it. And Jimmy Havoc came into Progress as a major babyface. There was like an internet campaign to get him on the shows.
Oh, wow.
He came on some of the shows. The crowd was really behind him. And then he had a brutal heel turn. I think it was Chapter 9. Where he attacked Jim Smallman and a couple other wrestlers and just shit all over the fans in the British way they do. So it was really vulgar and violent. That was just a really jarring heel turn. And I think that kind of momentum has carried itself forward. He's built that over time, adding people to his faction and getting out all these title matches in different ways. And the way he won the title initially, so Mark Andrews was the champion. He basically Mark Andrews won a tournament to where he could challenge the champion at any time he wanted. So he challenged the champion, who at the time was Rampage Brown. He challenged him right after he won the tournament, caught Rampage off guard. They had a little match, and Mark Andrews rolled him up for a quick victory. So Mark Andrews was champion. And now comes Jimmy Havoc, who beats on Mark Andrews. At the time, the title was a staff, which that's a whole other thing. But the
what is with the weird stuff with the titles on this show? Like we'll get to the tag title match later. Like I thought it was like the faceless gimmick, but instead that's the championships are some shield that looks like it's from a stage show at Universal Studios.
Yeah,
I'm glad they have a belt for the world title.
Yes.
It's pretty new at this point because initially it was a staff and it had an eagle on top of it, which is the Progress logo. But it was this gargantuan thing that everybody had to carry around. It was ridiculous.
Taking that through the airport.
Yeah. Yeah. But it makes a good weapon, apparently. So
yeah.
Beat up Mark Andrews with it.
Yeah, no one tell Gato and Dick Togo we'll have a staff championship in New Japan, and that'll be the House of Torture's championship matches.
Is that not a thing? You could have told me that's a real thing. I would have believed you.
Yeah. At this point, I'm shocked we haven't glued two of Yoshihashi's bow staffs together and made it the House of Torture TV championship.
We're it's too close to be funny.
Yeah.
Cuts too
Not
deep to the heart.
Exaggeration. Yeah. But Jimmy Havoc, he threatened to light Mark Andrews on fire if he didn't get a title shot right now. So he was awarded one because they didn't want a man to die via fire. So they gave him a title match, and Jimmy Havoc just pinned him and won the title because he basically just picked the bones, and now he's been champion for, I think it was 14 months, you said?
Wow.
It's weird because they say 14 months, but then they also say it's his 3rd anniversary of being the champion. And, I feel like I'm better than Brian Alvarez at math, but still, that doesn't seem to work.
Yeah, there's something wrong there. But keep in mind, they only do shows every other month. So
yeah.
He's probably has, 6 defenses maybe.
Yeah.
So then... You go ahead.
No, I was gonna say. So he sends 2 dudes to the ring. They beat up this mascot, and then the show is finally going to start. We're 15 minutes in. A lot of Smallman's intro here. I had a
lot of banter.
I had a lot of like, this meeting could have been an email vibe from the start. And
I'll tell you what I had flashbacks to is going to IWA Mid-South shows and Ian Rotten coming out and talking for 45 minutes about every grievance and yelling at the people who were at the show because we were somehow the problem that there weren't more people at the show. This wasn't quite that, but it was still lengthy. My takeaway from this first 15 minutes was that swearing definitely allowed on both over the house mic and the commentary. There's no tip jar. There's no swear jar there. It's all good.
I've got Jim Smallman commentary thoughts later. We'll get to those.
Oh boy, I can't wait.
Wait, so was Jim Smallman on play-by-play? That because the guy said he was Jimmy Barnett. Is that what he called himself on commentary?
Yeah, it's like when Gabe Sapolsky was commentary for ROH in the early days, and he went by Chris Lovey.
Yes, weren't there two? It's Chris Lovey. Then I think he used a different name too. Like at the very beginning, I think he was two different.
No matter
names.
what name he used, it was awful.
Right.
So.
Yes, very recognizable and not a good one.
But so the show starts out with a little animal brutality to kick off the show. So really starting off your experience well here.
It would be a good time to have "This is Progress" chanted. Then that always amused me. Like you would have like the most regressive, offensive things happen on the show, and then the crowd would chant "This is Progress," and my brain hurt.
Just thinking of your context, like, oh man, I gotta watch a show with a bunch of rapists and pedophiles. Well, at least there's no animal brutality. Oh god damn it.
Yeah, exactly. Let's just
for Pete's sake,
scratch them all off the list, I guess, before we get to the actual matches.
Hey, might as well just get it all out of the way. But yeah, opening match here. We got Zach Gibson versus Adamo O'Connor, aka Killian Dane.
Killian Dane, and then Zach Gibson would go on to be one of the grizzled young vets in NXT as well. So these are two guys I'm familiar with from NXT television.
And Jeremy, didn't we see? Correct me if I'm wrong. Did we see Killian Dane at that takeover show at Barclays that we were at? Was he on that show? I feel like he was.
I feel like he was.
Sanity Days.
Yeah. That would have been that would have been the Mania, the New York Mania. So,
yeah, I'm pretty sure that he was. I think that was probably the only time either of us have seen him live.
Mm-hmm. Was that when they won the tag titles?
Yes, that is it. Yep.
Yeah. So a couple tag team aficionados here in the opening match here. So we got Zach Gibson coming out. Lots of 2-1 chants, which apparently is a soccer reference. I guess the team that the people there like lost a soccer game match show. So, yeah, obviously Liverpool, Zach Gibson. People in London do not like Liverpool, to say the least.
I did get from this. That certainly that certainly came out. Jimmy Barnett / Jim Smallman says that there's something about Scouser culture that is an issue here. And then at one point early in this match, the crowd starts singing "Where's My Car Stereo?" And this is when I realized, oh yes, I am watching a Brit Rest show, and this is not going to be. I'm gonna have to recalibrate my brain for the crowd reactions here, or just be able to accept that I'm not gonna know what these human beings are talking about.
Yeah, you kind of just gotta sit back sometimes. It's like, oh, I'm never gonna understand what that is. They
Yes.
make references to TV shows over there. It's like, oh, okay, it's The Office, Ricky Gervais, something. Who knows?
Well, they start out all together, and by the end of this show, you can see the drunkenness take over, and then it's just like pockets of their own stuff going on. But yeah, early it's everyone together trying to have a good sing along, and then by the end it's a mess.
Oh, at first it's like impressive how synced they are. It's like they must have had practice before this, and at the end it's just like villain. So Damo versus Zach Gibson. It's a fun opener. You have Damo starting off hot with a drop kick, that big hairy bastard just coming out like a cannon. They fight outside. Someone gets thrown into the ringside chairs, which I'm always a sucker for that kind of spot. I believe it's Zach Gibson. He gets drop kicked into all the chairs.
He's drop kicked and ends up 3 rows deep into the chairs. Just completely wipes out. I don't know if this is a common spot here, but it was for this show. It was you would see as soon as people went out to the floor, the front row would scatter. Like
people,
Stan Hansen was coming out at an All Japan show in the 80s. Like people scattered. Yeah,
they knew what to do for sure. And I guess when you've got Big Damo coming in at a kayfabe 320 pounds from Jimmy Barnett, which cracked me up. It made me think of all those shows that we watch, Jeremy, where it's wrestling from the 80s, and a guy is probably like legit weighing in at 215, and Gorilla Monsoon says he's like 305.
That's right.
Like Damo's big, but I don't know that he was 320.
He looks
here.
dense though. He looks like a dense boy.
Oh, for sure.
He does, and I guess they could sort of be doing weight by scale. And when I say by scale, I guess I'm meaning that it's relative weight. And if you look at the fact that most of the guys in this show are well under 200 pounds. Comparatively speaking, Damo might be close to 400 pounds.
I don't ever want to hear British weight not referred to in stone, first of
yes.
all.
Yes.
So yeah, they're fighting on the outside a little bit. At some point, Damo charges Gibson, but Gibson gets out of the way, and Damo goes arm first into the ring post. And that sets up a lot of arm work inside the ring by Zach Gibson. Because his finisher is the Shankly Gates, which is an arm-based submission. So he's doing various submissions and moves to target the arm.
Just going back to that post spot, it cracked me up because it's one of those things that it's always amusing to me about wrestling physics is that when you start doing a move, when you start running toward the post, the animation must finish. And what I mean by that is he's running towards the post, his opponent moves, and yet he continues running toward the post until that video game animation is over. It's one of those things that, as a wrestling fan, you almost don't notice it. But if you were to show it to a non-wrestling fan, they'd be like, why did that man continue running headfirst into that steel object?
Us wrestling fans, we accept it. It's totally fine.
Look, Damo is 478 pounds. When you have that kind of weight behind you, you can't just stop. Okay, it's like a train.
That is accurate. But how many stone is that? That's what I need to know.
In the ring, when Damo starts throwing these avalanches in the corner and takes over, this is some good offense here. There's a lot of fire, a lot of good momentum, and this is Damo's Progress debut. So this is a good showing for Damo here on offense.
Well, it's also noticeable, and we'll get to it with one guy in particular later on the show, and I don't think it's just revisionist history. Like when you look at the show, you can very clearly see that the guys who are going to be stars in a couple of years, they stand out on this show so much more than the bubblegums of the world. And Damo here, the future Killian Dane, definitely fits that bill.
Yeah, no, his look here is great, by the way, because it was very minimalist. It was like very old school British, just trunks. It almost looked like just underwear he was wearing with boots.
It's because the no knee pads always do that.
Yes,
that's what it was. Because eventually in NXT they'd had like a shirt and jeans. It almost made him look small.
Yeah,
he had all that on, but he looked like a gargantuan here, a big hairy gargantuan. But yeah, my favorite spot probably of the whole match is when Gibson, I believe he was on his stomach. Damo gets on his back and he like surfs on him, and then he does a senton from that surf. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. So Gibson, he goes for a lung blower off the second rope, but Damo counters into a power bomb, spine buster kind of deal, but kicks out at 2. Then Damo goes for a splash in the corner, but Gibson gets out of the way and then is able to hit that lung blower, followed by a really impressive like spinning brain buster, which the strength on this guy to pick up this 783 pounder or whatever I said earlier.
He invented the Blade Buster, Jay White's future setup move.
How many moves does Jay White have? I feel like every movie does has a name for it.
That's
crazy.
Everything does have a wacky name for it. That is absolutely true.
The Sheath Slam.
Oh,
the Kiwi Crusher.
Yeah, try reviewing an ECW show from the late '90s. And,
oh God, Joey Styles.
Try catching up with you want to talk about everything's got a name, like.
Yeah. Oh, God. I mean, I'm still in '95 ECW, so the only moves people are doing are stabbing with glass and kendo stick shots. So there's not a lot of names for moves yet.
Well, Gibson here pulls out a fork to do some stabbing out of his boot.
Man, That's a segue. This guy's a host. This guy's a podcast host.
The best part about it, though, is that it's the decoy fork.
The decoy fork. You're right.
No, he had half a whole silverware set in his boots.
Yeah, I was disappointed that he didn't have like the regular fork and then the salad fork.
Are we sure that he did? Did we get a good look at it?
If this had been in HD, we may have been able to make that analysis.
Yeah, it's a shame. But yeah, I'm watching this match. It's like, oh, it's a fun little opener. And it just escalates quickly. Like this guy, he pulls out a fork. Zach Gibson does. The ref takes it, like you said, the decoy fork, only for Gibson to pull out a second fork out of his boot to stab Adamo in the face with said fork. And then Gibson follows it up with a penalty kick, and that gives Zach Gibson the win. So, Gibson looks like a savage coming out of this, gets the win. Adamo looks good coming out of it as well. So I enjoyed it for what it was.
Totally fine opener. Absolutely.
Yeah, totally fine opener, except for, again, going back to whatever we're calling the announcer, Jim Smallman here. So this match happens, the finish happens, we have a fork used, a fork and a decoy fork, and then the announcer, Smallman, is just like, well, that's a great win for Gibson, and he shows like no outrage at all for the fact that a fork was just used.
All right, I'm going to share my Smallman opinions now then, because that's exactly, so throughout this show, he's less of a commentator and more of a reporter. Like he's got no emotion or fire or anything to put over anything that's happening. He will just report in I've got
it's a top of the hour BBC News update.
He's
on
literally
the show.
just running down the moves of what just happened, and
he's saying what's happening, not reacting what's happening.
No, and he's not telling a story. He's not giving me any backstory about any of these guys. Like all the stuff that you told me at the top, Kyle, I heard none of that throughout any of this show. Like there's a lot of he's literally just reporting the moves that are happening and then reports when the finish happened. And that's it. Like it's not commentating on a pro wrestling show.
And it's definitely not built for dropping in randomly on a show. We talk about on our podcast how much we appreciate when announcers will really lay things out for you. Joey Styles was very good at that. Tony Schiavone, Jim Ross, even Gordon Solie back in the day. This was not that.
Well, because you're talking as a commentator, you've got to talk to your hardcore fans that have been there since day one, but you've got to talk to the fans that are, this is their first show. They're dropping in, they're checking it out, they're giving it a chance, and because you've always got to be thinking that your audience is growing. So how are you catching them up on what's going on, and how are you also catering to your hardcore fans who have been here since day one and giving them little nuggets to move things forward as well?
Yeah, that's a great point. I totally agree. I know eventually they moved to a two-man booth. I don't know if Smallman continues to do commentary or not, but because I'll often I watch early Ring of Honor a lot, and I dog on Gabe Sapolsky and his commentary because he's very he's the complete opposite. Like he tries too hard to give you every single little detail about every single little storyline going on. And that can get a little bit annoying in its own way, but I could definitely see, especially you guys coming in cold, not knowing really any of the backstory. But to be fair, this opener didn't really have any backstory. A lot of these matches, actually, because a lot of it's very main event heavy, this show. And I suppose the no DQ match has a storyline to it, which they touch on a little bit. But again, there's not many layers to it, really. Yeah,
I mean, I'm yelling and screaming during the Sumerian Death Squad match, and Jim Smallman's just reporting in the facts that are happening, and I'm like, dude, this is so exciting. Why are you not going nuts?
My favorite is when somebody will do a crazy move, and he'll be like, oh, fuck me, mate.
He has a little bit of British Kevin Gill poking through there.
Yes, absolutely. But let's talk about some suspenders.
Boy.
So we got,
the fashion corner on this one. This is in its own way, it's almost as offensive to me as Easy Money's gear back in the day.
Easy Money's gear though is gross. This is just wacky and silly.
I wouldn't say it's gross, but it does make me feel a little bit uncomfortable still, because it's on the top you are roadkill without a shirt. And then on the bottom, you are just wearing regular trunks. It's a look. I mean, I guess it stands out. I remember it. There aren't too many of these other guys, looks that I could really pick out of a lineup. So he's got that going for him, I guess.
And of course, we're talking about Shea Samuels and his open challenge. Kyle Ashmore versus Shea Samuels, who
Shaw Samuels.
Shaw Samuels.
How dare you?
Is he a descendant of Hack Myers?
Man, there is nobody else on the planet that knows about Hack Myers than you two guys. Can we talk about Hack Myers for a second? The phenomenon that is Hack Myers.
Absolutely. Hack Myers, I'll just say he's one of those guys, though, that it's so funny because Jeremy and I both grew up in the Chicago area where we did not have ECW on TV in 95, 96, the heyday of Hack Myers. And so the only time you saw Hack Myers' name, you heard about the fact that he was this ECW arena phenomenon, but you never saw him. And then actually seeing him, I'm like, oh, I guess I really needed to be there to get the whole deal.
He's the Shaw. That's all it is. He's one of the worst wrestlers of all time, but he's the most over at some points.
Which in some ways is the story of ECW.
Skill played no part in who was over or not. As long as he had a funny haircut and.
Yes, but ECW is not why you called. We have.
No, this is even though there's fork stabbings and maybe a little cannibalism later in the show, but we're not there yet.
Not there yet.
So we got Shaw Samuels versus Kyle Ashmore. So
from the Projo, which as someone who's
I
not
love
a hardcore Progress aficionado, I spent the majority of the rest of this show trying to figure out if that's the best or worst name for a wrestling training school, and I have yet to come to a conclusion.
Well, hey, do you get it?
The Progress
It's the
Dojo.
Progress Dojo.
Yeah, we got it. We're trying to.
Is that the issue?
Yeah,
That was not the issue. I was just.
I'm
this
in
the
on-
most
I'm
clever
in,
thing?
I'm in on good name. I'm in on good name. I'm putting a vote in. I like it.
See, I was leaning pretty heavily towards. I think I really hate this, but hearing
that's most stuff.
See, the problem is I'm not a big fan of fun in my wrestling. I'm not a real big fan of whimsy when it comes to the grappling, and this pegs the whimsy meter pretty high. But I'll defer to both of you.
This pegs the whimsy meter pretty high, he says. That's the first time that sentence has been
Print
uttered on this
the
podcast.
T-shirt.
There we go. It's my property now. But it's a Projo Open Challenge. God damn it! Now it sounds weird to me now.
No, it's good. It's still good.
Mission accomplished.
No, it's still good.
It sounds like a slur of some sort.
It sounds like a slur, or it sounds like another stab at creating an Ico Pro type product.
Yes, that's what it is.
I need to have a Projo shake and then work out so I can get big and get hired by WWE.
Yes. But it's a Projo Open Challenge that Shaw Samuels is having, and Kyle Ashmore is the one that accepts. So this is Kyle Ashmore's first Progress show. As we mentioned, he's from the Projo, and so he's relatively new to the game, I suppose. Not a lot to the match, I'll be honest. I mean, this Kyle Ashmore fella, he seems like a ginger John Silver to me. If anybody needs a visual aid.
Jeremy, that must be why you texted me and said how big of a fan you were of Kyle Ashmore.
That text never was sent.
Jeremy Deemer, not a fan of the John Silver.
I am not. I am the biggest anti-John Silver guy, and I sometimes I feel alone. Especially when I'm at an AEW show, I feel alone being anti-John Silver. But
you think you feel alone. I'm the anti-Danhausen guy, so think how I feel. But anyway, no, it's a good comp.
It is a good comp, yes.
Kyle Ashmore, he's, again, with the understanding that he's very early on in his career, he's totally fine here. He is certainly that guy that I mentioned earlier that is training to wrestle the same style that every other indie wrestler in every corner of the world wrestles, but he's completely inoffensive.
Yeah. No, he definitely fits the bill of what you guys were talking about earlier about how a lot of guys kind of wrestled the same way, like you just mentioned, and Kyle Ashmore is the epitome of that. But like you said, he's very early on in his career, so that's to be expected, and he held his own in this match for what it was. I mean, the only notable spot in this match for me was when Shaw hit a spine buster and got a 2 count, and Shaw I've never seen anybody more livid at a referee than Shaw Samuels got here. The referee was in the fetal position, and Shaw Samuels, his trunks were right here. I'll say that. Didn't know what he was trying to do here, but it is, Brit Rest after all.
There was also one other weird thing that happened in this match where Shaw runs at Kyle Ashworth. Kyle's near the ropes. Shaw runs at him and then just takes a flat back bump for no reason at all. I don't know if he thought that Kyle Ashworth was going to hit him with a super kick or hit him with something, but he just takes a flat back bump as though it's, like an Eddie Guerrero spot where you're doing the fake cheat, throw the belt, the ref doesn't see it, you take a bump. But it was just, somebody forgot something here.
Yeah, there's a few timing issues here, but yeah.
Shaw wins with a pile driver, gets the pin. Like you mentioned, not a lot to this, and I was mostly disappointed because we didn't get any spot where Ashmore would snap the suspenders of Samuels. They must be saving that for a bigger match, but
that's a sign of a rookie right there.
There you go.
It looked so obvious. I was waiting for it the whole time and never got it.
I think we learned what they do and don't teach at the Projo.
Not a lot of suspenders drills.
No.
Maybe that's how they learned. Maybe they added it.
It's the graduate course.
You get an IRS in there or a Madcap Moss. You got to know what to do when you're in that situation. But yeah, Kyle Ashmore, he goes for a pretty sweet looking spiral tap, but misses, and like you said, pile driver by Shaw for the win. But after that, we got maybe my match of the night here.
Yes. I'm so excited to talk about this match.
Yes, business picks up here for sure. And what we talked about earlier, as far as you can tell watching this show who the stars are going to be. And I don't know if there's any better description of that than seeing Tommy End, the future Aleister Black, the future Malachi Black, out here just among all these other wrestlers, particularly because most of the other guys on this show that would go on to be big stars, they're not really the fully formed version of who they would be as a star. Whereas here, Tommy End in 2015, he's every bit of Aleister Black / Malachi Black that you would see in more modern times. Like, he's there.
But when he comes out on the entrance ramp, so he comes out on the stage before going down the stairs, right? Comes out on the stage. Him and Michael Dante, his tag team partner, the Sumerian Death Squad. Now, I do not look ahead to the card when I watch a show. I like to be surprised at what's going to happen here. So,
except for when I text you and say, "Oh my God, it's Reno Riggins against Iron Mike Sharp for 15 minutes." You excited?
I said yes, no spoilers, and so I try to avoid the card ahead of time. So I have no idea who the Sumerian Death Squad is off the top of my head, hearing this introduction. And when they come out, I immediately said, "Oh, that looks like a low rent version of Malachi Black there." And then as he emerges from the lighting into a more well lit camera angle, I'm like, "Oh no, that's Tommy End." And they put the chyron on the bottom. I'm like, "Sure is." I'm like, "This is exciting." And so I'm ready to watch him go here against two dudes that I've never heard of, and I had to look up. These are like, I don't know about Chuck Mambo, but is he just like a random indie geek, or
well, Chuck Mambo is still around? Chuck Mambo is actually a featured wrestler in current day Rev Pro, and it is always a trip to see Chuck Mambo mixing it up with young lions and future New Japan main eventers.
Oh, I bet. Yeah,
and he really is no different than he is here as a very young wrestler in 2015. He is still every bit the Chuck Mambo that you see here. These guys, it's Chuck Mambo and Pastor William Ever. And they look like men who should die at the hands of the Sumerian Death Squad within a matter of seconds.
Yes, I was like, oh, okay. When I saw these guys come out, I'm like, ugh, this is overdone
Are you guys besmirching the name of Sweet Jesus?
That's right. I forgot. As a team, they are Sweet Jesus. Yes, I forgot.
See, now I will say that's a much better tag team name, Sweet Jesus, than
not Sweet Jesus.
That almost went another direction.
That's bubblegum.
Yeah, God, there you go. But no, Sweet Jesus, I will take that as a tag team name over Pro Joe for the dojo. That's kind of where I'm at on the name.
Both are good. I approve of both names. They're both fantastic. So yeah, I was very excited to see the Sumerian Death Squad do a number on these guys here.
Yeah, this is the first time I've seen the Sumerian Death Squad. I've heard of them. I'm aware they were big in WXW previously to this. And you got Chuck Mambo and Pastor William Ever, who are graduates of the Projo, so they learned the suspender drills, I guess.
Yes.
weren't able to apply it here, but they could have if they had the chance.
Well, and who knows if Tommy End had stayed around in WWE long enough, he may have had suspenders.
Hey,
Yeah, boy, speaking of Tommy End and his partner here, Michael Dante, could two guys have taken more different career paths? Like, wow, like these two.
So what has happened to Michael Dante?
Yeah, I have never seen or heard of Michael Dante in my life until this. Yeah.
Nobody knows.
I pulled him up. He just indies, like a lot of indies, like never anything big.
More Jannetty than Jannetty as far as the trajectory of the tag team.
No, Jannetty had a run. But
that's why I said more Jannetty than Jannetty.
Yeah. No, this guy didn't do anything of note, like beyond the independent scene.
Well, I don't know when Tommy End started teaming with Brody King. I don't know if that was recently or if that was around this era, but the whole time I'm watching this, because as we're recording this, Brody King, Malachi Black are teaming on AEW, and I couldn't help but make the comparisons.
Yeah,
Michael Dante is almost like a smaller version of Brody King, a less tattooed version of him.
I mean, that's kind of like saying I'm a smaller version of Brock Lesnar. Like he is a smaller
factually
and
true.
Yeah, it is factually true, but burying the lead a little bit. But no, he is definitely smaller. He is also, I mean, the thing I'll say about Dante teaming with Tommy End here is that traditionally in tag teams you always had the very sort of like just meat and potatoes guy who wasn't very impressive, and then you had the really impressive guy, whether it be Jim Neidhart and Bret Hart is always the best example of that, or a British Bulldog and a Dynamite Kid. At least you could say that with this, like who the guy in the tag team is. It is undoubtedly Tommy End. Whereas I feel like when you see a Brody King and Malachi Black together, it's almost like, obviously not size wise, but like a skyscrapers deal where it's, both guys are the top guy.
There were several spots, to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, there were several spots in this match where you have like Tommy End in the ring. He's just doing all these Muay Thai roundhouse kicks and flying knees and pump kicks to both guys, one after the other. And then Tommy End will just tag in Michael Dante, and he'll just run in, just clothesline people, just over and over again. So it's like a very meat and potatoes.
Yeah.
Versus with the Tommy End, who's more of the flash of the team.
Very sad when those tags took place. Thankfully, we had, and not that he was horrible, but he just took up space, whereas Tommy End just leaps off the screen.
Boy, he does. This is one of those. We're gonna talk about it again later with some of the guys towards the main event. But man, Tommy End, yeah, he jumps off the screen. He's you can tell that this guy's he's different than everybody. He's on a higher level, and you can tell he's gonna ascend to bigger. This guy's a star, and the people reacted to him that way from the start.
And you could tell he, to my point earlier, like even here in 2015, there was nothing he needed to add to his game. Like you could have taken him 2015 out of this and stuck him into the upper card of New Japan, and he would have fit right away, like every bit as much as he would now if he went over.
Absolutely. Yeah, he's definitely the one that stuck out. But to be fair, I mean, the match in general, I mean, it slapped. It was a great match.
This was great.
All four guys played their part.
I thought a little too much offense for Sweet Jesus. I could have
yes.
It was because you have the Sumerian Death Squad, which the name alone just has this intimidation factor about it. And then you see the guys involved in it. It was, these are some pretty big dudes. And then you have Chuck Mambo, who looks like the Owen Hart impersonator. from the Nation skit.
Yes.
And you have Pastor William Ever, otherwise known as Bill Ever Gang.
Got it.
Wow.
Got it.
It's no Projo, but it's
Nice.
pretty good.
Nice.
Yep. It took me a few chapters to realize that myself. But you think it's going to be a squash match? I mean, I'm looking at this. We're watching a 1995 Raw. I mean, these guys are just going to get squashed like bugs. But no, it's pretty 50-50, I would say, like you said.
It's too 50-50. Like the action is great, but my takeaway, like as I look at my notes, it was like, yeah, good match, but these guys got way too much offense. Like I have no problem with them having a short period of offense, but as this match goes on and on, like it is, to your point, 50-50 back and forth, and I don't need to see Chuck Mambo getting near falls on Tommy End. Like what hope spot, one roll up, 2 count, Tommy End hit him with the jumping knee, and it's fine. Again, it's indie shows, you want to give everybody great matches, you don't want to do squash matches, but I'm a big proponent of when you have a match that looks and feels like there's a big imbalance between where the guys are at, let's go with that. Let's not try to make it back and forth like every other match on the show.
I also added that the tag division in Progress at this point is very thin.
Okay.
As we can kind of tell by the tag team title matches later. But so I could see this as a way of them building up that division by adding another credible team in Sweet Jesus. Which Pastor William Ever specifically is super over with the crowd. Chuck Mambo's pretty over as well. So they're like inexplicably like beloved by the crowd. So I can see, giving them some offense in, building up their credibility to maybe one day, maybe potentially challenge for the titles. I don't know if they ever win the tag team titles or not. I try to stay in the dark in terms of that kind of stuff. But yeah.
I mean, to your point though, that it is true that you look at these guys, you look at some of the other guys we already talked about. To me, Eddie Dennis is another one, and Wild Boar that we see later. That if you're just dropping in and you see these guys wrestle, you have no idea why they're as over as they are. But they are with these 700 people in the audience. So who am I to say as someone dropping in that these guys shouldn't be getting offense when the crowd likes it, the crowd wants them to, and so you're booking to your crowd. You're not booking to someone watching 7 years later for a podcast.
Yeah, one of my favorite spots. So they're working over the leg of Tommy End. He's able to kick his way free and make the tag to Dante. Dante runs wild. Huge boot to the face of the pastor. The pastor fights back. He comes off the top with a cross body and gets a 0 count. One of my favorite spots of the match. Just not even a 1 count. I popped huge for that.
And that's absolutely what should happen to what we said earlier. These guys getting a 0 count on Tommy End, spot of the show.
Yeah, and I would say the major significant spots were to the favor of Sumerian Death Squad. Like there's one point where Michael Dante does a hip toss on one of the guys, and then Tommy End does a roundhouse kick while the guy's upside down. Just really good cohesion between both teams, really. There's one spot where the Death Squad, they basically bounce William Ever off the rope, make him do a backflip and face plant onto the mat. Good combinations by Sweet Jesus too, like Enziguri, clothesline, kind of just one after the other kind of stuff. It's like they've been teaming for forever. I don't know if they had teamed before this in other shows or not, but it felt like they had. We get a clothesline from heaven from Jesus.
Very
of
cute.
Course.
Yes, and Tommy End did a full flip for it. So yeah,
I think that's where I got mad. I appreciate the fact that he was doing that, but I'm like, no, I don't want to see Tommy End take a full flip up for a clothesline for the pastor.
If Jesus clotheslined you wouldn't go inside out?
I mean, I guess it depends on what was going to... When I saw the white light, if he was going to be able to tell me that I was going to be going to the good place and not the bad place, I probably would have taken a bump over the top rope for that.
Yeah. Would you say you couldn't William Eve in that?
Yes.
Pause for laughter.
There you go. No, that's, I feel like I would have had to go back to the Projo and learn a little bit more.
Yeah.
So I had some qualms with the finish here, where so Pastor gets cut off going for a superplex. Okay, Dante has him held for for knees from Tommy End. Then Dante power bombs the pastor onto the knees of Tommy End, and this was not the finish. I was like, oh my gosh, how is that? I thought that was it, and
that was a bridge too far. I agree.
That should have been the spot, because then they follow it up with the suplex by Tommy into the catch by Dante, power slam for the pin. What you see from the modern day Brody King, Malachi Black finish. Which is fine, but it's tough to follow after watching the power bomb onto the knees of Tommy.
I don't love that as a finish. I don't know, maybe if they just haven't hit it clean in AEW, but every time, and it was kind of the same here. It's that, I forget what they call it, the Kings of the Black Throne. I forget what their finisher is called, but it's like you said, the suplex throw into a power slam, which, by the way, here it's called Black Mass, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, it's very underwhelming after all the.
It's hard to finish. It's hard to follow up. Like when you have a spectacular move, then you go to that as a finish. That could be a totally fine, good finish. I like it, but it's hard when it's the penultimate move to it is something more spectacular.
Well, we could do a whole podcast about guys whose setup moves or teams whose setup moves are better and more devastating looking than their finishers. Yes. I think to your point, though, about that sort of suplex throw into the power slam finisher, at least from what I've seen, whether it be here or, like you said, the few times that the House of Black has done it on AEW, like for that move to look impactful, the power slam needs to be happening like as the guy is coming toward you, almost like it's all one motion. Because if you're catching him and then there's a pause and then you're doing a power slam, essentially you're just doing a power slam. And that's not a finisher unless it's the early 90s and you're Davey Boy Smith.
Right.
He at least gets a running start.
Right, yeah. Yeah. So the Viking Raiders, their move, it's like a way better version of this. He tosses the guy way up in the air, and then it's like the impact of up to down, adds to the impact.
You think about even back in the day, Goldberg would do that press slam, drop to the shoulder, and a power slam all in one motion, but it would be all in one motion. And in some ways, as a bit of an aside, I always thought that looked more impressive than the jackhammer.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Little Braun Breaker does it, I believe, if you guys are NXT 2.0 fans.
Yeah, who isn't?
As we record this on a Tuesday night.
Tape machines are rolling, maybe.
Yes, they are, certainly. But, so Sumerian Death Squad gets the win there.
Yeah, my match of the night by a mile so far.
Yeah, so far it's nothing even close. Like this is like I said, would like to see a little bit less 50-50, but the action was awesome. We got to see peak Tommy End, so no complaints.
Yeah. I mean, I was watching the match and I was like, this match is good, but it could use some coat hangers. So I was really pleased when the next match happened. It's a no disqualification match between Mark Haskins and Rampage Brown. So the backstory here, because maybe they didn't lay it out in commentary. So Haskins and Brown, they are former stablemates. They were in a faction called Screw Indie Wrestling. But basically, there was a situation where Rampage, he was given the option by Jim Smallman. You could either have a match with Samoa. Yeah, you could have a match with Samoa Joe if you want, but in order for that to happen, you have to leave your faction. And the Rampage was like, "Oh yeah, mate, yeah, let's do that." So Haskins was obviously disrespected by this, and so that's kind of led to the hostility. And then a few chapters ago, Rampage actually had a title match. But earlier in the show, Haskins jumped him, injured his leg. And then a few chapters after that, they had a match in which Haskins got himself DQ'd by introducing a chair to the match. And that's that's why this is no DQ, so you can't have that finish anymore. So that's basically the backstory to this match and why it's happening. But yeah, man, this match, it felt like just a scrappy fight, which I think for a street fight kind of match is kind of what you should be going for, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I was impressed by how much this felt like a fight, because I feel like a lot of times on indie shows, you'll have street fights and there'll be no rules, but it's mostly just guys doing all their moves and then maybe a few plunder spots here or there. Nothing drives me more crazy than when it's the culmination of a feud. It's a street fight. And then what are we doing? We're doing headlocks and arm drags and indie standoff spots for 2 minutes. And thankfully, this did start off violent and aggressive.
Yeah, a lot of fighting on their knees, a lot of biting, hair pulling, stiff strikes, all the stuff that you want from this kind of match.
Guys getting thrown through rows of chairs. We had Haskins get thrown through 5 rows of chairs, which begs the question, is for each match on the card that you move up, can you knock out an additional row of chairs?
You know, you might be joking on that, but that sounds like a thing they would do. Like, how many rows can you get through this guy?
You get in big trouble if you do 4 instead of 5.
Well, the good thing is, these chairs get messed up, but everyone at indie shows are always so accommodating for where their seats are that I'm sure there's no issues when everyone sets their chairs back up and everyone's right back in the same spots that they were before.
Yeah.
He says, tongue in cheek. Well, hopefully at this show, at least, it wasn't double sold tickets like the old Ring of Honor days. My God, talk about being able to do other podcasts, early Ring of Honor shows, and buying a ticket and then finding out that 3 other parties also have the same 4 tickets that you have.
I'll get you guys on one of my Ring of Honor shows one day. We'll definitely dive into that.
Oh, yeah, no, have some stories for sure.
Yeah, because I was watching these chair spots getting whipped into the chairs, and I'm thinking about the barricade spots from early Ring of Honor when it was just every match, this barricade just get ripped out.
Fun barricade story. I broke a bone in my hand. In suburban Milwaukee at a Ring of Honor show. Second match. I was second row. I was so excited that the person in front of me had vacated their seat. I'm like, I'm going to bang a barricade. And then I did, and I felt a pop.
Oh, boy. Fun barricade story. That's never a good ending.
No, definitely not. It's never as fun as it sounds.
So this is the match where in my notes I call out that the commentary is making me mad because here after Haskins gets sent into the 4th row of chairs, Brown then hits him with a hard chair shot to the back, and the commentary gets into full reporting mode, and basically says, ludicrous shot to the back with the chair, he says in a matter-of-fact description. It was very where the crowd is like shocked at the sounds of the impact of this chair. Just matter-of-fact reporting.
When we're talking about crowd and sounds in this match, can someone please explain to me why every time Mark Haskins is on offense, the crowd proceeds to make the most annoying sound in the world for the entire match? They're just like, it just goes on and on. Like I was watching with my earbuds in like I usually do, and then I had to take them out for the rest of the match because it was too intense.
Yeah. This is when they went from sober to buzzing like a bumblebee in this match.
Yes.
I guess they're just chanting "hat." They drag out the "hat" for literally 3 minutes at a time. But yeah, chair shots all throughout this match. Rampage goes for one off the second rope, Rampage goes for it off the second rope, but Haskins punches the chair into Rampage's face. So we get a spot. So Rampage falls into a tree of woe on the outside, so like on the apron area, so that Haskins can, I guess, drop kick the chair into his face. It looked a little wonky, but
it looked very contrived. Like it was one of those things that I'm sure sounded cool in his head, but anytime you have a chair shot chair assisted move that requires that much cooperation from the guy that's getting hit, never looks great.
No, yeah, for sure. Haskins sets up a chair in the corner in between the second and third rope. But lo and behold, he ends up running right into it after Rampage reverses. And then gets decapitated with a clothesline from Rampage. Haskins eventually fights back. He locks in I don't know what you call it, but it's like a flipping armbar. Tommaso Ciampa used to do it when he like flips over his guy, so he's like facing the opposite way.
Almost like I wrote this down in my notes, like a perpendicular one-armed cattle mutilation.
There we go. That sounds perfect. I think
that probably made it sound more confusing though when you said, but it's in my brain and on my notes, so I had to get it out.
Yeah, on this offensive flurry here, he throws some huge kicks, like just great kicks by Haskins. I was impressed.
Haskins is also one of those guys that when you see him in a match like this, he wrestles bigger than he is.
Yeah.
And so it's, you watch this match and it's him and Rampage Brown. Rampage, big intimidating guy, and you're like, oh, I don't know how this is going to work visually. And then you're halfway through the match and you're not even seeing that difference at all. I was also, just as an aside, really impressed by Rampage Brown here. I had not seen a whole lot of him. I had heard a lot about him. And I remember there being a time period where New Japan had been taking a look at him, and it sounded like he was going to be coming in. He obviously went a different direction, but I thought he looked awesome in this match.
Yeah, Rampage is great, for sure, especially because, like you, I wasn't too familiar with him until I started watching all these Progress shows, and he's won me over, for sure. just a no-nonsense heavyweight. He just does everything well.
Again, it stands out on a show with a lot of guys that are doing that cruiserweight style.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe my favorite part of this match. So there's a table set up in the corner.
Oh, God. This table, when I saw this table, I immediately was like, this is going to be a problem.
Yeah, this is not a Mattel table that's pre-cut to fall in the middle.
No. This table would make the tables of Japan blush.
Yes, this was a supersized version of a Japanese table, or this was like one of those timekeepers or announcers tables from the late 70s, early 80s on shows where guys would get kind of haphazardly thrown into, and there was no way that it was ever going to break. Here, for some reason, that's what they were using in 2015.
No, absolutely. And there's Rampage. There's the table set up in the corner. Rampage power bombs Mark Haskins into this table. The table doesn't budge an inch. Mind you, this is Rampage Brown, who is a strong fella, to say the least. Mark Haskins, who is not a small man himself. So you have all of this weight and momentum going towards the table.
Yeah, it's a running start. This isn't just a standing power bomb. He's trying to awesome bomb him through the table.
So brutal.
Yeah. But then he does it again because he has to break the table. You can't just not break the table. So he does it again, and the table kind of breaks, I guess, enough to satisfy
it breaks
the crowd.
high. It doesn't break in the middle. And, it did not look pleasant at all.
The imagery of Rampage hits that second powerbomb, and then him looking lovingly at the table.
He's laying on the ground looking at it. It was great camera work. This show, particularly early on in this show, I had some issues with the kind of the production of it, but that was a major league wrestling. I'm not talking MLW. That was a major league wrestling camera shot they got there.
Absolutely. But yeah, so Rampage, he comes off the second rope for something, but Haskins throws a chair at him.
Wait, first of all, he kicked out of that table spot.
Yeah, that made me angry.
It did. I'm like, sometimes indie wrestling is annoying this way.
Well, the thing is, Rampage was looking at the table lovingly for too long. I mean, he just got distracted. So I gave Haskins, there's storytelling elements in there.
He was admiring his work. Jim Ross would have been so angry by his lack of immediate follow-up.
That's another podcast.
Podcast. Jim Ross also on commentary would have talked about how that didn't make sense.
Wow. Why is there a table under the ring? Are we just keeping tables under the ring now? Shut up, JR.
I always love when modern day JR decides to do a wrestling critique podcast live on the air of the broadcast that he's doing.
He commentates like a podcast.
Yes, he does.
Yes, he is, I guess, nowadays. But JR's not here. But who is here? Haskins, and you know what he has? Some coat hangers. And
fulfilling your dreams and wishes from a few minutes ago.
Oh, thank God. What are the odds? Because Haskins, he pulls out a bag, and I'm like, oh, is it thumbtacks? Is it Legos? Or what is it? But it's coat hangers, so I'm like, okay, I don't know what's going to happen here. I had no idea what was going to happen next. So Haskins takes the coat hanger and fish hooks Rampage with it. Blood's pouring out of Rampage's mouth. I mean, not pouring. It's dripping at a relative rate. But then Haskins, as if that's not enough. So Rampage is bleeding from the mouth. Haskins goes back under the ring, pulls out a can of salt, and pours a big pile of it in his hand, and then throws the salt into Rampage's mouth.
Literally rubbing salt on the wounds of the man.
A literal pouring salt in the wounds of Rampage.
Yes.
Loved it.
Hold on. Let me get this. Fuck, it's not playing. Oh, there's a drum.
There it is. Yes.
It was worth
Perfect
the wait.
timing.
Worth it.
Well, we're talking about an indie show too, so the timing doesn't have to be perfect. Just bake that in.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, live in progress. Again.
This is progress, I'm chanting.
But yeah, regardless of the salt and the wound, Rampage is able to hit a Samoan drop onto Haskins, followed by a pile driver so Rampage has him up for the pile driver. There's a chair in front of him, so he's trying to jump forward onto the chair, but I kind of misses.
Yeah,
it looked fine enough. I mean, it's a pile driver, a jumping pile driver, so it's devastating enough. It's a believable finish.
Exactly. That's totally fine. I was amused by the fact that, to me, this Salt was like the modern day garbage wrestling Brit Rest version of the Macho Man Randy Savage reviving elbow drop. In that this Salt, not only was it salt in the wounds, but it woke Rampage up. He did not take another move after having salt rubbed in his wounds. He hit 2 moves and got the win.
Yeah, that's the opposite of Kryptonite.
Yeah,
for him.
Yeah, no, this was a fun fight, and it was a different style than anything else we've seen on the show. This was great, and we loved. I felt like it was you probably could have shaved a few minutes off of this. Felt it went pretty long, and so some of the later stuff felt a little rushed, but this was still fun for what it was.
I believe they hated each other, and that's the number one thing
100%.
in the street fight. So mission accomplished there.
Exactly. It felt like they were fighting each other, not having a match with weapons. Basically.
Exactly, and particularly on a show like this, where I think somewhat because of the crowd and just also because of the style, so much of this felt like a wrestling show exhibition, almost bordering on sometimes like self-parody. And not that the action wasn't good, but just the way the crowd responses were. A lot of times it was hard to really slip in and feel invested, whereas I did feel invested in this, and I had not seen anything of this feud up until then.
Yeah, for sure. But then this is basically where intermission happens, and Jim Smallman, he announces the Super Strong Style 16 tournament, which is a annual tournament that Progress does, still to this day, I believe. In this first tournament, the winner will get a Progress Championship match. You guys familiar with this tournament at all?
So this is the one that Flash Morgan Webster won to get his title shot. Is that?
So that's a different tournament. I'm realizing now they do a lot of tournaments here.
Got it.
So this was sort of their version of kind of like a 24 karat or doing a bola. Basically, their TPI, their version of the big annual tournament to bring in guys from outside of the company, get some people traveling in to watch the show that weren't local, that sort of deal.
It seems like a carbon copy of the 16 karat to me, but I've never seen it. But that's my impression of what it is.
Yeah,
gotcha.
They bring in like a Ciampa. They bring in who else? I looked at the card the other night. The Walter comes in. Some guys that from like you said, other countries get flown in, and it's a little international flair to it. So looking forward to watching that. But it's basically announced on this chapter.
I bet I will guarantee you actually that any of the matches on that show are probably better than the match we're about to see.
Here we
next.
go, Tag Team Championship.
Let's
talk about it.
Tag Team Championship. And Jeremy, I feel like we've really we've decried the tag team division in certain eras of certain promotions we've watched on our podcast. I think of an episode, I think earlier this season on Wrestling at Random, where it was 95 or 96 Survivor Series. And or SummerSlam. Remember the tag division had like
SummerSlam. Yeah,
it had the Body Donnas as faces. It had the Smoking Guns as heels.
The
there
Godwins.
were two, the Godwins. There was one other team, and the New Rockers.
The New Rockers
of a bleach blonde Bob Holly and Leaf Cassidy. Al Snow. I thought that was a rough tag team division. That was a rough scene for the tag team titles. Here, with the Faceless and their opponents, Wild Boar and Eddie Dennis, I felt like I was back on that SummerSlam show. I was looking for a Body Donna's run-in.
So let's talk about the Faceless first. Now,
can we not?
Yeah, do we have to? Are we contractually obligated to?
I got excited, Adam. I got excited when I heard that the team was called the Faceless, and they were going to come out all creepy. I'm like, oh, you know what this is? Like, I'm getting real All Japan Blackhearts vibes.
Yes, Blackhearts. I also, when they came out, this reminded me of Starrcade 90 when the Black Scorpion was introduced, and like the 10 other Black Scorpions came down the ring as the UFO descended from the ceiling.
But
I
that
watched that
was
match recently. I watched that match because shout out to the PROGRESSleMania podcast. He had me on his show to cover Starrcade 1990. And I would never forgive him for it because, like you said, the main event was, and I'm comparing this to this match because we had the Faceless versus Eddie Dennis and Wild Boar for the Progress titles. And the reason I compare it to that match, or that show, is because that show is headlined by Sting versus the Black Scorpion, who was a figure. He just had black sweater, black mask, black clothes. He was a mysterious man. Nobody knew his identity. And I was watching that Starrcade match, and I was like, why is this match so awful? And it's because Ric Flair, who was the Black Scorpion, spoiler alert, couldn't do any of his Ric Flair things.
Yep.
He couldn't do any of his moves. He couldn't do any of his mannerisms. In fact, he had to actively keep him inside. So what resulted was him not doing anything. And
what resulted was if Ric Flair had been forced to train at the WWE Performance Center, if it existed back in the day, that would have been the end product. That wrestler.
Very much so. But that's kind of what we got here with Faceless number 1 and Faceless number 2.
Accompanied by Faceless number 3. Don't forget Faceless number 3.
How could I forget?
They wear masks that feature faces on them. This is where they went wrong. This is where they should have followed the black hearts.
Most faces.
Well, they should have gone full Super Invader style and just worn a red sock.
Just a sock. Yeah.
On their face.
Yes, they had faces. So
they also were, well, they were both masked. The Faceless 1 and 2 that were in the match. They're both wearing masks. They're both wearing the cargo pants and the black shirt. You can tell them apart. They do have different physiques.
Do you guys know who they were?
No.
So one was Danny Garnell, who you may not know. He's kind of an obscure.
Was that the smaller one?
Wrestler.
The smaller guy?
He was the bigger lad.
Bigger. Okay.
The other one was Ligero.
Really?
I believe, actually.
Yeah.
I've heard Ligero was a part of this, and you go back and look at it, his physique is very Ligero-esque.
And he was not terrible comparatively in this match.
Well, the thing of it, neither of them are terrible, but they can't do their moves that they do. Right.
Yeah.
So they can't do anything. They can do is punch and headlock, and that's pretty much what this match was, a lot of it.
Oh. Yeah.
Outside of the what's your safe word chant at
yeah. Well, I was my whole thing with this, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, anything else we can say about this match is eclipsed by the journey that I went on in my mind when I saw the Faceless come out with those shields, that the two like jigsaw puzzle type of shields that are combined to be one shield. And it looks
like it's the yin and yang like necklace that my daughter would have with her best friend, and they can put it together. Like that's what the shield is.
I was so much more okay with that being part of this horribly lame Faceless act. But when it was revealed on commentary towards the end of this match that was in fact the tag team championship of the Progress world, I need an explanation from Jim Smallman or someone as to why they thought that was a good idea.
It's cool for that first, because like the first champions were Eddie Dennis and Mark Andrews. So it's cool for that first shot. They put them together, like you said, obviously. But it's like now every champion thus thereafter just needs to carry these two halves of shields, like you said, you have to carry them through the airport and put them in their luggage.
It's a cool tournament trophy. Like if they did an annual tag team tournament and that was what you got for winning, coolest freaking trophies ever.
So Eddie Dennis, speaking of coolest things ever, comes out to Andrew WK's Party Hard. Great theme choice. Thumbs up, Eddie Dennis.
Fashion corner, by the way, or at least visual appearance corner on Wild Boar and Eddie Dennis.
Sure.
I feel like if you melted them down and then reconstituted them, they would be one normal size wrestler. But Eddie Dennis is like 6'11" and 130 pounds. And then Wild Boar is like 4'3" and is the size of Rhino.
It's like when you're creating a wrestler and you're like having fun with all the extremes.
Yeah, the slider going up and down. Yeah.
I'm gonna just watch the guy get elongated.
But Eddie Dennis and Wild Boar. I'm a fans of both those guys. But most of this match is pretty much just the Faceless ganging up on Boar and Dennis, because you have the third Faceless out there getting involved a little bit, and he plays into the finish. But before we get there, Eddie Dennis, because Wild Boar is getting beat on most of this match. He's the smaller guy.
Oh, yeah. You would say, Adam, I had in my notes here, I was starting to feel like AWA 87's review where Marty Jannetty.
Yes.
They got the heat on Marty Jannetty for what might still be going on in 2022.
So just kept teasing the hot tag, and with each time they cut it off, there was less and less and less and less interest. Yeah, no, I definitely had vibes of that as well.
Same thing here. And the faceless get no reaction from the people either. The people are not into this act.
They're annoyed at the faceless at best.
Right.
When you think about like just like the flow of this show, what they've already seen, most recently they just saw that wild, awesome street fight, and then now they're seeing this. It's just it's an odd place to put it.
Gotta have a cool down match, brother.
If your tag team championships are the cool down match, then there's a problem with your tag team division. But
yeah,
far be it from me.
That's fair. But Eddie Dennis, he gets not hot tag. He gets a tag, destroys everybody, does a crazy like double. So he has one of the faceless in a fallaway slam position. He has the other one in a Samoan drop position.
That was
like
pretty
a double
cool.
move.
Yeah,
that was very impressive.
And yes, I did not think that Eddie Dennis was going to pull off a power move like that.
He's a very strong dude. Like you see,
apparently,
like, a lot of his NXT UK matches, he'll do things like, what? Because he's like 8 feet tall, but he's also 100 pounds. So it's like you don't think he's gonna be able to pick up a guy that big. But ultimately, the faceless number 3 gets involved, hits Wild Boar in the face with one half of the Progress Shield, and then the faceless in the ring hit a double stomp backpack stunner combination.
I'm sorry, this move is not okay. This is lame. They tried with it. It's one of those moves where it's like the double stomp is not doing anything to make the backpack stunner any worse than it would have been. I think probably what took me out of it more was that they tried it 30 seconds earlier, and it fell apart in spectacular fashion. They go for this, like a backpack something, and then the faceless guy, and I think it was Wild Boar, just awkwardly tumbled to the mat.
Wild Boar fought out. Wild Boar fought out.
No, because Jim Smallman.
I'm not on camera. You don't see my eyes rolling back into my head here.
Do my best Byron Saxton impression over here.
Yeah. Because
the announcer called it a backpack stunner I'm like, no, they just fell down. I did not even I'm like, that can't possibly be a backpack stunner. And then I saw him do it for real here in a minute.
Yeah, you need much more creative camera work and camera switching as a company if you're going to be able to call that an actually fully executed move. And then my radar always went up for what it does whenever there's a botched move like this. I'm always like, don't go back and do it again. Don't go back and do it again. Just try something else. And they went back and did it again. So that probably is a bit of my dislike of this finisher.
Yeah.
As unfair as it probably is.
No, that's fair. I mean, I wouldn't like to get stomped. I don't know what it adds to the stunner, but
true, fair enough. The stomp is a move that is hurting you, separate from the stunner. So
the backpack stunner is already a weak looking move. That's also part of the problem. I'm not sold on it. No.
Well, have someone give it to you and report back your findings.
I think I get out of a solid 2.8.
Yeah.
If I had trained at the Projo enough to really build up my my ability to take punishment, I think I'd kick out at 2.8, 2.9 maybe.
So we've cooled down with your tag team title match, and now what do we transition to?
I've never gotten so mad at a PowerPoint slide in my life. So we got Flash Morgan Webster, the winner of the Natural Progression Series, versus Bubblegum.
Now, we don't need to talk much about Bubblegum if we do. I mean,
we do. We need to talk a lot about it.
First, do a deep dive here.
First, Bubblegum looks as if you had in a video game combined Drake Younger and Kyle O'Reilly, but given him no talent, but thankfully also not some really questionable beliefs. Although maybe, who knows? I don't know.
It definitely you definitely had like jacked referee trying to be a wrestler vibes. Like, yeah, I could see that. Like,
he also was like 2 or 3 different characters in one. Like, we talk about wrestling style, in-ring style. He's doing the India, I talked about again, the step up enziguri in the corner, the same top rope moves, everything. But then he's also trying to be this really sleazy, offensive heel. And those two things don't work well together at all.
If you wanted to play a drinking game, watching this match, take a drink every time Bubblegum sticks his hand in his tights and sniffs it.
Yeah. I like drinking and all, but not worth it.
The best part about it, too, is, and I say the best, I mean the worst, he's one of those guys that, like, it's clear that the act doesn't work, but he is 110% convinced that he's the most over thing, and he's going to be in the big time next week.
For sure. That if the right person sees this, it's going to be. You guys don't get it, but it's awesome.
When Gabe sees it and tells Hunter, you're going to be main eventing NXT. Just wait.
He's a few steps away from Grayson Waller. It's like if you took Grayson Waller and you put Fred Durst's face on him. That's basically what you would get here. But Bubblegum, I mean, he comes out. He's wearing, I think it's a Manchester City jersey he's wearing. I could be wrong on that. Soccer, for anybody who's unaware. And he comes out. He keeps lifting up his shirt to show his abs. He keeps reaching in his trunks, rubbing his balls, pulling out 2 fingers, which I believe is the middle finger over there.
And it all feels so much less entertaining than the way you're even describing it. Like when he's doing it, it feels as though somebody's pushing a button on a video game remote controller, and then he's executing the taunt. Like there's no, you just don't buy it.
There's no reason for it. I mean, it's just
like
he's just doing it over and over again. And then he's here. He's facing Flash Morgan Webster, and ultimately, I mean, both these guys are super talented in the ring. I mean, they're both cruiserweight style guys. It's very fast paced. You can
Flash Morgan Webster is talented. We will end it there. He's the talented guy.
I'll say this. Bubblegum seems like an athletic fellow.
Yes.
But I am okay if I never see him again.
Yes. No, 100%. He has talent. He's one of those guys that there's talent there, but he has no idea how to put it together into being a coherent wrestler that like the matches actually work. But I thought Flash Morgan Webster looked awesome in this match. Like I think
he did.
As far as the athletic wrestlers we've seen on this show to this point, he is far and away the best of those guys.
And let me make one more point. You know, he comes out to "In the City" by The Jam, another solid choice of a theme song, especially for his full-on mod character. I'm in. Like this, I'm a big fan of Flash Morgan Webster here.
Not only the entrance music, but then we get, I would say, probably the best crowd sing-along chant of the entire show with the Flash will tear you apart. I'm not going to try to sing because that would not be good for anybody, but that was great. Obviously riffing off of the Love will tear you apart.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, like every time Bubblegum, he'll do something impressive. Like Flash, at one point, he went for a Poison Rana, but Bubblegum tried to counter it, but he had to like walk backwards. It took a lot of core strength and balance to like make him not fall over like the backpack stunner from the last match.
Yeah.
And then Bubblegum hits a one-winged angel for a 2 count, which is just bizarre to see.
Yeah, that was kind of weird for sure. A 2 count, and again, to your point, Jeremy, earlier, that was not sold as a big near fall from Smallman on commentary. And even if, let's say Kenny Omega wasn't using that move at that point, or let's say it wasn't an established finisher, that is still such a visually impressive move that I would like to hear an announcer, at least, I don't know, make it seem more than it's a side headlock takeover.
No, Flash Morgan Webster wills this crowd into this match because they are not into it, and until he starts to, he just puts, I'm going to carry this match and I'm going to get them into this match, and he did, and this was great towards the finish here.
And he's perpetual motion throughout. I mean, how about that slingshot, the pescado into the Rana on the floor? Super impressive. And that was maybe a minute or two into the match.
I mean, to this day, Flash Morgan Webster, he's silky smooth. Has some of the best strikes in wrestling, in my opinion, and just his combination with all his high-flying offense. I mean, he's a pleasure to watch all the time.
Which, and the point about the strikes is key, because a lot of times guys that are great high flyers, that's one of the major weaknesses. You know, you take a guy like Dante Martin, as incredible of a high flyer as he is, and he continues to improve. He's super young. You know, the strikes are a significant weak point, and definitely not here with Webster.
And when you got a guy who can connect with the crowd, like not just do cool moves, but like that you can see that he's got that crowd connection, and that's that it factor that he's got for sure.
Well, and it also bodes well then later in your career, you can pull back on that stuff. You know, as you get older, injuries start to take hold. Yeah. You're not going to have to be dependent on that to be able to still have that connection, get reactions, which you can't say the same for a lot of guys that wrestle a similar style.
Yeah. But in this match, ultimately, Flash So Bubblegum is on the top rope. Flash runs up the ropes, hits a crazy Hurricane Rana. I thought he was going to break his neck, but he somehow pulls it off and follows it up with a 450 splash for the win. Just a really impressive finish because you have doing the Rana in one corner, Bubblegum goes flying, Flash goes to the opposite corner, does the 450. It just looked really good.
And to your point about smoothness, that 450 was as perfectly executed as you'll see.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Which, a thing we haven't pointed out yet is Progress looks like they have actual ropes and not the cables like most modern wrestling does today.
Definitely more of a WWF style rope situation combined with a very small ring. We should mention.
Yes, yeah, but so doing these high flying moves off of actual ropes instead of the cables, very impressive.
Absolutely. All right, so we're done with Bubblegum forever, hopefully.
Good riddance, Bubblegum.
So now we can talk about Jimmy Havoc.
What is this video promo?
First of all, I thought it was really well done. Like for an indie show, like this is high production here.
The cinematography was great.
Yeah,
but
like
the
execution was solid. Like I was impressed for an indie show.
I need a warning though when I'm going to see a man eat either a real or fake heart. I need someone to tell me that's coming because I did not need that.
Oh, you got to surprise people with that sometimes. I mean, the last chapter, the show opened with a similar kind of vignette here, but Jimmy Havoc stabbed a man to death. Blood was splattering. That's how we opened the show. Chapter
Lovely.
17. Now, Chapter 18, we have him here in a similar kind of vignette. He's cutting a promo. He has like a white something on. There's blood all over it. I even forget what. The only thing I remember is him at the end. He had a plate of some meat, eating it with a fork, and it really disturbed me to my core. So.
Yeah, it was basically like flashing back and forth between like him doing really disturbing things, eating organs, and then him looking kind of a bit more normal, like at this kind of dinner table-y type thing. And those, in a weird way, to your point, those shots were almost more disturbing than the really over-the-top disturbing shots.
No, it's real. The movie like American Psycho. That's the kind of vibe you were getting.
I think that's what they were going for. Yeah,
and
for sure.
I will defer to both of you guys because, as Jeremy knows, movies not my strong point.
But that leads us into the main event. The Progress Championship is on the line. We mentioned it earlier. Jimmy Havoc is defending it in a six-man elimination match against Dave Mastiff, Paul Robinson, Marty Scurll, Noam Dar, and Will Ospreay.
Six-man elimination. I'm very glad that that's what this was. I always get worried. I hate the idea of the champion being able to lose without ever having been pinned in a match or directly losing. So excited about that. And the story seems to be here that it's not quite 4-on-2, but it is 2 in the sense that Jimmy Havoc and Paul Robinson are aligned.
Yes. So, like I mentioned in the beginning, all like Marty Scurll, I guess Marty Scurll has it, but Noam Dar, Will Ospreay, Dave Mastiff, they've all had their shots at the Progress title, but were cheated out in some sort of way. Marty Scurll is there, who's just transitioned to the villain very recently, so he's red hot at this point. And then you got Jimmy Havoc and Paul Robinson, who represent the regression faction. Get it? Because it's progress, regression, it's opposite.
So it's disappointed we didn't get any "this is regress" chance.
Well, they don't like them, you see.
Yeah.
So, and it used to be a faction of 4, but 2 of them were kicked out of the faction, which we'll touch on later, which might not have meant anything to you guys, but I'll explain when we get
I definitely did not get that at all. One thing I do want to mention before we get too deep into this, because we're talking about Will Ospreay.
Yes, good. I've got thoughts.
This is not physically the Will Ospreay that you know now, even the Will Ospreay that you know from 3 or 4 years ago when he was a top junior heavyweight. He had talked about before how up until a couple of years ago, he had never lifted a weight in his life. And seeing this, I believe the man. He facially he looks younger, but body wise, it's he looks like a smaller Eddie Dennis body wise.
Yeah.
It's absolutely nuts how much he has bulked up today. He's added so much muscle in present day that it was like it's been a slow progression of him adding this muscle over the years, that like going back to this 2015 here, it's jarring to see how thin he is in this match. Wow.
Well, and again, even compared to how he looked when he first came into New Japan, like you go back and watch those matches and you're like, man, he's put on so much size now compared to then. But then when you see, like, we just saw him, Jeremy and I just saw him live at a Warrior Wrestling show about a month and a half ago. And so you're seeing him on that show. Like, I think that was against Blake Christian and Trey Miguel. Yep. And he was so much bigger than those guys, even though they all wrestle a similar style. So then seeing him here so tiny was just, I was not fully prepared for that.
One other point I want to make about Ospreay before we get into the rest of the folks is Will Ospreay. You mentioned, Adam, that we saw him live. He is a wrestler that you have to see live. Some of the stuff that he does and the way he wrestles, it doesn't translate as well to television, because you're watching him on television. You're like, wow, this guy's he's incredible, one of the best wrestlers in the world in 2022. You see him live, it's a different level altogether, and it's a different experience. We first noticed it when Adam and I went to a Ring of Honor New Japan show at the Odeum in Villa Park. We saw Ospreay wrestle.
It was Flip Gordon in 2018.
Gordon. Yeah, so we saw that match, and that was the first time we were sitting like second row for that, and we were like, oh my gosh, like, wow, like we really noticed the live Ospreay presentation as just special, and then you see it today even more so. Just if you get a chance to see him live, go out of your way to see a Will Ospreay in person.
Yeah, awesome. And just very quickly to that point, I almost can't think of anyone else in recent times where it's been that way, where he will be on a card with a lot of other very good wrestlers who are considered the top wrestlers or near top wrestlers in that same sort of fast-paced, high-flying, hard-hitting style. And then you see him out there with him, and you're like, my God, this guy is at a completely different level. Yes. It's something to see. I mean, like that Flip Gordon match, that was when Flip Gordon was getting all the buzz, all the hype. And then you saw him, and it's like, yeah, he's pretty good, but my God, he's nowhere near this level.
Right. Yeah, and even back then, in 2015, we're looking at this match. There's 6 people involved, but the spotlight is really on Jimmy Havoc and Will Ospreay. Yes. Those are the 2 guys that are the headline of this match, so to speak. And Ospreay, I mean, physically, obviously, he's evolved, but it's just funny. You see him come out for his entrance. He's just such a white meat baby face.
Oh yeah,
so running up on each of the corners. Come on, gang! And now he's out. He has such a presence to him nowadays.
Yeah. Now he's Conor McGregor. He was not Conor McGregor back then, for sure. But it is interesting in that we'll see, particularly towards the finish, a lot of the things that separate him from other guys that do the style, and I'm not just talking about athletically, but like intensity, facial expressions, all that is still there here in 2015.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. But the match starts. We got 6 people in the ring. And it's pretty much, it splits onto 4 versus 2 down the middle of the ring. So you got Jimmy Havoc, Paul Robinson versus everybody else. And the match starts with Paul Robinson hitting a double low blow onto Marty and Noam as Jimmy Havoc tries to do the same thing to Dave Mastiff, but Mastiff kind of blocks it. And then basically he chases Havoc around the ring. This is pretty much all hell breaks loose at the beginning of this match. Everybody's fighting on the outside. I don't even know if anybody's fighting in the ring. Everybody's more getting thrown into the rows of chairs.
Yeah, we're getting seven rows deep of chairs at this point as the main event.
And you got Marty Scurll. He has his umbrella. There's one spot where he just pokes Mastiff in the dick with it, which is fun. There's a point where Havoc he superplexes Will Ospreay to the outside onto everybody else, that classic indie kind of spot that you typically see, but it was fun.
And Havoc takes all of that onto the floor.
Yes.
Everybody else catches Ospreay, but Havoc just goes full back bump off the top rope to the floor.
They know where the money is.
Yeah, exactly. That looked pretty rough. I did also like, by the way, one of the few times where our announcer gives us a little bit of backstory that Robinson and Will Ospreay used to be a team, and I love this tag team name, the Swords of Essex. That is an awesome name.
Yeah, they were. I've only seen a little bit of them because Paul Robinson would eventually turn on Ospreay, in one of the first chapters. But Paul Robinson's another guy. He started out in the first couple chapters. He was another just baby face. Everybody loved him. He was playing to the crowd. Then now he's just this he's bald, this skinhead, this Dobby looking character.
He basically looks like Chris Daniels Cito would be the best way to describe him visually. I also isn't that that spin kick that Will Ospreay does with his opponent on the ground? Isn't that named after Paul Robinson? Doesn't he call that the Robinson Special, or used to call it that? I was wondering if that's who that was named after.
I didn't know if it was him or Billy Robinson or somebody. That makes sense though. I never really thought about that. Ospreay's another guy. It's like every one of his moves has a name.
Yes.
But it drives me insane. But we get the first elimination here when Paul Robinson hits Dave Mastiff with a low blow, and then Noam Dar comes in with a running kick to the face and eliminates Mastiff.
This made me violently angry on my couch. I desperately wanted this to come down to Mastiff and Ospreay, and this was I kind of had the same reaction to this, Jeremy, that I had again on our December to Dismember show we did this season when CM Punk and Rob Van Dam were the first two men eliminated from the Extreme Elimination Chamber. I felt my hopes and dreams for this match diminishing greatly.
Well, Mastiff had just done an awesome release German suplex, sending Havoc into the buckles, and I'm like, here we go, and then he's eliminated.
It was well done, though, especially with Dar kind of, picking up the pieces and getting it, like, kind of feeling a little bit conflicted about taking the win, but he does, and then we'll see that'll play into what happens a few minutes later.
Yeah. Like you said, so Noam Dar, he eliminates Mastiff, but he's conflicted because they want to get the title off Havoc, and him eliminating Mastiff is a detriment to that. So as Noam is kind of conflicted, he's like, oh my God, what have I done? He gets kicked in the face by Jimmy Havoc and thus eliminated. I believe it was just like a super kick, right, by Jimmy Havoc? Or was there any other element to it?
I think that was it.
Yeah, now, I did, Noam Dar did have, he has a move called the Champagne Super Knee Bar, which the Oasis tie-in is made me giggle as
another great theme song.
That is it's a great theme song with the Oasis theme song, and then having a move called the Champagne Super Knee Bar.
I was really struggling with whether I liked that or not. I decided I did. That was like teetering on the line of like ECW Joey Styles move names, where I'm like, you're trying a little too hard. But the fact that it was the Oasis reference made it okay.
Yes.
Yeah. No, it's fun. It's always fun. So now it's 2-on-2 somehow. So it's pretty much Jimmy Havoc and Paul Robinson versus Marty Scurll and Will Ospreay.
Which it's so weird to see Scurll and Ospreay kind of on the same side a little bit.
Well, even at this point, I mean, we're very early in their feud that they would have for years, but it's still pretty established at that point. So it's even in the context of 2015, it was weird to see.
Well, with the idea that Ospreay can never beat Scurll, even back then, and obviously that played through all the way into their New Japan feud.
Yeah, absolutely. But they team together a little bit. Marty Scurll hits a tornado DDT on the Jimmy Havoc, but keeps the head locked in, rolls right into a chicken wing. Havoc's able to fight out of it eventually. Paul Robinson gets back in. Marty Scurll just picks up Paul Robinson, which I believe Paul Robinson was announced at like 130 pounds, which sounds crazy to me.
If Skrull's able to press slam you.
Yes. That 130 pounds felt very accurate compared to some of the more worked weights that we had earlier on in the show. I believe that.
Yeah. Scurll military presses Paul Robinson to the outside, lands on Jimmy Havoc. Ospreay tries to take advantage by giving a stomp to Scurll, but Scurll evades, and now these two start going at it. It's like, guys, let's just team together. Let's get the title of Jimmy Havoc, but everyone just is greedy for the title and wants to get eliminations, I guess. Ospreay and Marty Scurll have an exchange, which anybody who's ever seen a match between these two knows that they have amazing chemistry. The reversals, the counters between these guys, always fun to watch. Scurll locks in a chicken wing on Ospreay, but Ospreay is able to roll through into a roll-up, gets the 1-2-3 onto Skrull. So Marty Skrull is now eliminated. So now it's a 2-1-1 handicap match, and Regression has the advantage. So it's like, how did we get here? So it's 3 people left. Havoc, Robinson, obviously, they gang up on Ospreay. There's one portion where they're beating down on Ospreay. Ospreay's on the ground. Paul Robinson drops the sickest loogie I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, God, that was horrible.
Worse than spit on Ospreay.
Worse than the hanger spot. Worse than the salt in the wounds. Anything.
Gross.
Thank you. I would take light tubes, anything over that. Especially, I mean, even through 2015 eyes, 2022 eyes, just blow me up before you do that to me.
No, it was super gross. This is gross. This is a timeless grossness.
At no point is this not going to be gross. But at some point, Will fights back, knocks out Havoc. Paul Robinson prevents him from making the pin. So Paul Robinson knocks Will Ospreay to the outside. So now you have Havoc on the mat. You have Will Ospreay on the outside. Paul Robinson's conflicted whether he wants to do a tope on a Will Ospreay or pin Jimmy Havoc, which is a fun little moment.
Yeah, the crowd was great in this too, as far as trying to get him to do what they want him to do. I will admit, though, at this point, I was a little distracted by the fact that I had just seen Will Ospreay execute the zigzag.
Yes.
How could I forget? Just a way better version than Dolph Ziggler does, but we don't talk about that. But yeah, Paul takes this opportunity to try to pin Jimmy Havoc, his master, or the crowd. I think the crowd chanted Jimmy's little bitch.
Yep.
I don't know what that would make Jimmy, but so Paul Robinson pins Jimmy Havoc, but Havoc kicks out, which prompts a "You're in trouble" chant, which is fun.
I like
Havoc,
that.
And this is Havoc with the not thrilled with this just happened face. Very good. Again, good camera work here to get that.
Absolutely. But they shake hands, bygones be bygones. But Ospreay's able to recover. He drop kicks Paul Robinson into Havoc, knocking Havoc to the outside. And this allows Will Ospreay to hit the Essex Destroyer onto Paul Robinson.
The Essex Destroyer being a DDT version of a Canadian Destroyer.
Mm-hmm. Devastating looking. And that that eliminates Paul Robinson from the equation.
So what we've learned from this is that Canadian Destroyers cannot pin anyone unless it's like mid-2000s TNA and your Petey Williams. But the Essex Destroyer is a pinfall-worthy move.
Well, I think you have to be from where the move is called.
Yeah,
Very good point. Very good point.
I can see that.
Yeah, so that's the magic of it.
So how do we explain all those Death Valley driver finishes in wrestling through the years?
That's their second home. That's where they vacation, in Death Valley. So it's down to Will Ospreay and Jimmy Havoc, which was the main event of the last chapter. This is kind of the ongoing story between the two. And so it's down to these two. Paul Robinson on his way out attacks Will Ospreay, gives him a knee in the corner just to further be a dickhead, as if he needed to do anything else other than what he's already done. So another underlying story here. So Will Ospreay recently, I don't think he broke his neck, but he definitely injured himself doing the 630. And this was on they're called Endeavor shows, which are kind of like the minor leagues of Progress, kind of the NXT to Progress. But he was on one of those shows and he did the 630 and he landed high on his neck and injured himself. So the premise here is that Will Ospreay, now he's like gun shy to do it. Like now he doesn't want to do it. He's scared he's going to do that again. And that comes into play when Will has Jimmy down on the mat. Will goes to the top rope. He's prepping to do the 630, but he can't do it. He's hesitating. So instead, he just does a nice and easy spinning shooting star press onto Havoc. But Havoc gets the knees up because Will hesitated too long. Gets a 2 count.
This was a great near fall.
Yeah, this was my favorite spot.
Finish.
Yes. Yeah, the best thing on the entire show from an in-ring perspective, because you combined the modern high-flying craziness with a great, storyline point that clearly everybody in the audience was 100% on board with and knew what it was, and they were trying to will their guy, no pun intended, to work through his problems and get the win here.
Yeah, Yeah, and like you said, the false finish here was great because he goes for the shooting star press. Jimmy gets the knees up, rolls up into a pin, 2 count. Jimmy then hits the acid rainmaker, which is his finisher, and gets a 2 count. It's at this point where Havoc, he grabs a mic because Ospreay is just down and out. He's been hit with so many moves. Havoc grabs the mic, and he basically brings Jim Smallman, who's ringside. He brings him over. Havoc puts Will's teeth around the bottom rope so that Will is biting the bottom rope. Havoc talks into the mic. He's talking to Jim Smallman. He says, "This is what's going to happen to everybody that you put in my way." And then Jimmy Havoc proceeds to give Will a curb stomp onto the rope. Brutal looking. Follows it up with the acid rainmaker, a second one, and that gives Jimmy Havoc the win.
So is this his like first legitimate win as champion?
Trying to think. I mean, they've all been fairly legit. I mean, because like the last.
Because this was pretty decisive.
Yeah, I was surprised by how decisive this was. And again, I'm popping in, and I'm not really sure, kind of where Will Ospreay is in his progression. And obviously, Jimmy Havoc is a much bigger deal here than he would be like on AEW Dark, but it still felt a little bit jarring.
It's because I'm with you. When I watched Jimmy Havoc on AEW, this is before I watched any Progress. So to me, it's like you, it's just like kind of like a skinny Raven or a scrawny Nigel McGuinness that's not as good at wrestling kind of guy. Like that's kind of my impression of him. But when you watch all these in order, you see his story arc. You really get invested in Jimmy Havoc. You really believe in him that he's a champion.
Well, and you could even tell that watching this show, like as the match went along, you had the video feature before and the match went along, like I could understand how this worked in this context much more than I did at the beginning of the show, where I'm like, what? Why is this guy a champion? I loved the curb stomp with the mouth over the rope spot. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, didn't Britt Baker steal this spot with Yuka Sakazaki on AEW? I'm almost positive that on an episode of Dynamite a few years ago that happened. So it's one of those that I'm shocked you don't see more, because it's such a brutally vicious thing, and it looks great, but it also is probably fairly safe to execute if you're not actually trying to kill the person.
Yeah, but at the same point, I'm kind of glad we don't see it all the time, because when it does happen, it looks vicious.
That's a very good point as well.
But yeah, that's there's some hullabaloo after the match. But any other thoughts on the match itself?
Yeah, no, I mean this was this finish moves the story along. It sets up kind of gets most of these guys now out of the way, like you mentioned, and now this clears the path for Flash Morgan Webster to get his opportunity.
Well, exactly. My take when I was watching this is, wow, Jimmy Havoc has cleared the deck. Who possibly is going to be able to take the title from him? And then Flash Morgan Webster's music hits, and we find out that's what's coming next.
Yeah. So the match concludes, and like you said, Flash Morgan Webster comes out, and as we mentioned, he's the Natural Progression Series winner, which essentially is kind of like a Money in the Bank. You win a title shot whenever you want. And Flash comes out. He's like, I could go ahead and challenge you right now, but that would make me like you, which adds a sense of. Because logically, you're like, why wouldn't he just challenge him right now? But he has those morals behind it, so it all makes sense.
Well, it also showed how much the crowd is with him, because you could feel the crowd wanting to boo him for not taking the title shot now, but they loved him so much that they stopped themselves from doing that.
Yes, absolutely. And Flash, because he knows he has that Jimmy Havoc, he has Paul Robinson behind him. He has Isaac Zercher, who was the other henchman guy from the beginning. He knows that Havoc has these guys, so Flash has to have himself an insurance policy. And who is this insurance policy? Well, it's the London Riots that return here. Now, you guys might not, this probably didn't mean anything to you if you're coming into this cold. But basically, and I kind of alluded to it before, but when Jimmy Havoc initially turned heel, he turned heel by aligning with the London Riots. They attacked Jim Smallman. They attacked a couple other guys that were ringside. A vicious heel turn. So that was regression. It was Havoc, the London Riots, and Paul Robinson. So a few chapters ago, there was a 4-on-4 tag team match, and whoever lost the match, whoever got the pinfall or I guess whoever took the fall, had to leave Progress forever. And one of the London riots ended up losing that. And the way it happened, Jimmy Havoc basically threw them under the bus. Essentially, that's what the finish was. So they are not happy with Jimmy Havoc. And the whole story here is that Jim Smallman has agreed to bring the London riots back because he knows that they have a vendetta against Havoc and Robinson, and they're going to do whatever they can to destroy Jimmy Havoc. And I believe even they cut a promo later, the London riots do, that they're not here for titles. They're here to make sure that Jimmy Havoc dies. So that's a little extreme, but it's kind of par for the course for what we've seen so far. So the London riots return. They attack Robinson and Havoc and send the crowd home happy, I suppose. So is that adding any context to what you saw?
Yeah, definitely.
Because I had more sense.
I was not familiar with either of those guys or kind of what the significance was, but you could tell from the crowd reaction, it was clearly significant to them.
Yeah, because they were such hardcore heels before, and now they're like so beloved. So it was kind of just like equal in the opposite direction. So, in the next chapter, the headline match is the London Riots versus Havoc and Robinson. So that sets that up, and that brings the show to a close. So, yeah, folks, Progress Wrestling Chapter 18. And any other overall thoughts on the show that we didn't touch on?
No, I mean there was the guys who were the stars of this show were they delivered. It was great to see them. I never have to see Bubblegum again, and but no, otherwise this is a fun ending. It's one of those, watching the crowd get back into it at the end and get invested in this. When you looked around and you saw how many people had on some sort of Jimmy Havoc gear. These people were invested in this storyline, so they've been watching it over the chapters, like you mentioned, and there's a lot of people that cared, and for a lot of this show, there was there was a lot of entertaining themselves, but in the main event, it was what they were here for, and it delivered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's a key point too, like we talked about earlier, that I would imagine, and Kyle, you would know this better than either me or Jeremy would, but I would imagine this probably felt a little bit different from your normal big Progress show, because we had all those stars in the main event, and so the stuff you had prior, there wasn't necessarily, outside of the street fight, there wasn't necessarily a lot of strong emotional investment. So maybe some of the things that we talked about with the British crowds, those came to the forefront a little bit more in those matches where when we got in the main event, and people were. Everybody there had strong emotions, strong feelings on Jimmy Havoc. It was either they were in his corner or they wanted him to die, as their shirt said, and that led to great reactions throughout. And yeah, I mean, it's a fun show. I mean, like Jeremy said, the guys that I expected to delivered. I wouldn't say that there was anybody that I came into it really not knowing a ton about that I was completely blown away by. I would say the closest to that was probably Rampage Brown. I was really impressed by, but outside of that, it was the guys that were stars showed themselves to be stars, and the guys that weren't were mostly okay, but weren't really, much to write home about.
Yeah, nothing was really offensively bad, in my opinion. It's definitely one of the weaker shows, just because, like you said, it was so top heavy with the main event. But the no DQ match, the tag match with Tommy End. This
not the one with the faceless?
Yeah.
What match?
Not the tag match. Okay.
That would be the only truly, I would say, close to offensively bad thing on it. But no.
No, you're right. Sorry to interrupt you. Keep going.
No. That's pretty much the point I was making. But Progress. I mean, they're especially in this era, because from what I've heard, they kind of get to a point where they lose their storyline elements to their shows, which I guess I'll get there eventually. But the early days of Progress are consistently great watches. So.
Super fun time with the Apron Bump Podcast. You can see the entire episode. We did video. I was on camera, so you can.
Yeah, I would have been on camera, but as we've talked about, Jeremy and I off air, while I have great internet as far as speed, advertised speed here in the apartment complex that I'm living in a garden level apartment, as they lovingly call basement apartments. The actual consistency of that high speed varies wildly. And so unfortunately, we have not yet been able to bring you Wrestling at Random proper with video of both of us. But you'll be able to see when that show goes up. in the Apron Bump feed in a few weeks. You'll be able to see Jeremy on video, maybe a moment or two of me on video as well before I wisely make the decision to cut that video.
But yeah, so definitely, thanks for checking it out. Hope you enjoyed it. This is, it's not a regular thing we're gonna do here, but it's just a special treat, shaking things up here. So for new listeners who really enjoyed last week's Primetime Wrestling, we are going to be back to our regularly scheduled format starting next Sunday. If you want to hit the additional content, our Patreon will still be going strong on Thursday in the normal fashion. So make sure you subscribe, patreon.com/wrestlingatrandom.
Yes, but if you're listening to this in linear fashion, you will already know that you have already received that regular Thursday show in your bonus content feed. And if you haven't, what are you waiting for? Because as Jeremy always says, it's not as if when you first sign in at patreon.com/wrestlingatrandom and sign up, or in the Apple Podcast bonus audio, if you do it that way, it's not as if you just get that week's bonus podcast. You sign up for 1 month and it automatically unlocks all those episodes. We have right around 50 additional episodes that you have never heard if you've never subscribed in the bonus content feed. They're all there waiting for you.
And with that, we're going to wrap it up. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll talk to you again next time.